Les Miserables is a book that everybody is intending to read. Every student of literature has this work on their list, and this is a story that everybody knows the story already. This is a book which you would say that without reading, you already know the story. But reading it is fascinating. It is an extraordinary epic. This is written by a literary titan of French literature, Victor Hugo. Victor Hugo stands with Shakespeare of England and Goethe of Germany or Dante of Italy. So he is a legend, and this work is an epic. This is one of those books where you would say that the book carries the soul of a nation during a particular period. Something very interesting about Les Miserables is that Hugo himself took about 17 years to write this masterpiece, which is over 2000 pages with more than 350 chapters. This is a book that you could read chapter by chapter for an entire year. This is not something for binge reading, but rather a book that deserves a great many rereadings. We have to keep going back into this work, which is a very compelling narrative. The characters are so strong, so full dimensional. They are such that you would befriend the characters on the way. You would feel that you are living in that world. So for me, this has a personal feeling towards it. Is the first time I heard it read was when I was a 6-year-old child, and I heard it read by my grandfather. And I believe that at that time the character Guillermin, that is the grandfather of Marius, he is merely what you would call an old relic when I read it now, because he was representing the bourgeois culture, the past. But at that young age, for me, he was grandfather, and the very word grandfather made that character dear to me, even though it is a very small character in the story. And later on, as a student, I approached this very book and I found it so significant in its historical value. At the age when you are into history, this is definitely a historical novel. This shows the period of France just before the French Revolution. The French Revolution, we can say, is like a culmination, or it is the template for all revolutions of Europe. In 1783, once the French Revolution started, all the European countries were scared of an upheaval. That wind of revolution, or that great revolt, it passed on to all the European countries. But here we see that Victor Hugo, he is concentrating on a particular uprising of the period. This could be called an insurrection, a small insurrection, but he is giving it in a very detailed form. And he makes this piece of history very personalized, very individualized, that we are made to see the problems that is faced by the people during this particular uprising. So this is Hugo's way of making man realize that history is being repeated and that the people participating in it are human beings, flesh and blood. They are not mere numbers, they are not mere statistics, but they are people, people who love each other, who have families, who are sons and grandsons. So later on, I read this work as a college student, and I was so deeply interested only in the love between the main character Marius and his lady love Cosette. So Cosette and Marius are the two characters which now I believe are not so well fleshed out as the rest of them, but at a young age they seem to hold the story together. And later on, now with a mature rereading, more and more rereadings, I believe that I feel the most interesting character for me, the most important character for me is definitely Jean Valjean and his repentance, the mercy, the kindness that he meets with the bishop, the cleansing of one's soul, and that has become the most important feature now. So, this is a book that has something to tell every age and every reader, and every rereading would give you more and more insights. Victor Hugo started off as a royalist, and by the end of his work became a republican, we can say. He is definitely the one of the giants of French literature. During the period that this work came in, it was instantly translated into so many languages all over the world. It took the very world by force, and it was painting the soul of France itself, the history of France. This is a book that is essential to learn French history too. One of the first translation was by Wilbur. That is a translation which was done during the same period. So it is an English which is corresponding to the French language of the period. But today, I would this particular translation is by Norman Denny, which is more modern. And now you have recent ones in 2007 by Julie Rose and so on. So, if you would like to read a translation which is more closer to the present English, then by all means go for the recent translations. There are too many digressions, we could say, in Victor Hugo, where he keeps going away from the main story. He goes into Waterloo, he goes into the revolution. So, but all these digressions are essential in a sense in order to draw that bigger picture, and that is what makes it an epic. So I would say that this is a sort of book that maybe in your first reading you would be concentrating only on the story, and you can always come back to it and go into all the digressions, the tangents that he seems to flow into all the time. So this is my present read, and I would recommend it to every student of literature.